So I'm going to suggest sort of a little bit of what I see going on. I run a nonprofit called the Internet Archive, which number 300 website. Anyway, you'll get to know a little bit more about what we do, Wayback Machine and the like. But I'd like to start with giving money is hard. And so if we take sort of people who are really trying to figure out what to do with their money to make positive change, I've got sort of a unique position of being able to see what actually happens after people push a lot of money, say, into the electoral system. Citizens United made it so that people could offer more money, and people are trying to have the right people be elected. And so I want to start with actually kind of something fun. We're archiving all television, and we can analyze it at scale. So during the last election cycle, we went to battleground states and archived the 4 major channels in 20 locations, and then analyzed them using audio fingerprinting and structures to be able to find all of the television ads and who's paying for them and who's paying for them. So the idea was to try to understand what is going on by taking a macro view of our information environment. And my favorite rendition of this, actually, and I'm going to run this and see if I can get this to go. It was done by the Atlantic magazine, taking all of our statistics of the political ads. That if you were in Iowa, what is it like to be in Iowa? A couple days before the caucuses were on. So this is Atlantic magazine, and they made a game. And these are the ads that you're this little guy on a couch. And you run this, and you're trying to avoid political ads by channel flipping. And so these are the ads that are coming down at you. Okay, it's okay. We're doing all right. It's early in the morning here, so we're still doing okay. First hour done. So those are the political ads. Oh no, damn. All right, got hit by some ads. And so you're trying to basically understand what it's like to be in Iowa, which is it's getting a little intense. And I'm still avoiding by channel flipping, starting to be at a phenomenal rate. And you're going on through the day and starting to get harder and harder and harder. And then the next hour, and the ads start really, blam! Okay. So this is just, ta-da, you lose, right? You basically just got completely hit. We also were able to study the mentions of different candidates across by taking a macro view of what's going on television. And basically Trump figured out how to get mentioned all the time. The media basically made it so that everyone who's talking about and thinking about this one candidate, he outweighed every other candidate combined in almost all time periods he was involved in the election. So this guy is just a miracle of getting known. And that's, I think, something that is very helpful towards getting an idea of what's going on. Okay, why do I bring this up? I'd say giving money is hard. There's a lot of unintended consequences of giving money. And I think what we're doing in large case is we're poisoning the commons. We have the internet, which is what people now turn to the internet more than television even, to try to find what is going on out there. And what is going on out there is swayable with small amounts of money. So a lot of the things that were going on with it, Facebook is well-meaning people spending money to try to get people elected. There were also other not great characters involved in funding money from Russia, but there's other, and you do it through ads, you do it through trolls, you do it by poisoning, you go by going and changing Wikipedia pages, you do it through all of these systems that have been developed in the commercial world, now applied into the election world. So, what do we do about all of this? We're having an information environment that's getting some troubles going on out there. Knight Foundation found that 33% of Americans have a positive view of the news media. Millennials, even less. So where are we going to turn to when we've basically taken our commons and put it wrong. One thing that's a kind of a positive light in this is actually libraries. Libraries are seen as positive. But I'd say the libraries in the world actually are letting people down. They're not being used as much. I run the Internet Archive, which is a public library, not public in the sense of part of the government, but public in the sense that it's used by people all over the world. And why are we sort of letting people down? So people are, we conned everyone, most everyone, to turn to their screens to answer questions. Right? We said, that's going to be the library. But even the guy from Singularity Universities, he said yesterday that everything's online. It's actually not true at all. So if you take the 20th century, for instance, it's tied up, and it's large part by copyright. So here's the Internet Archive has been digitizing millions of books over the years. It's, you know, Google Books, they got stopped in the courts. We've been basically moving along. We've got 4 million books digitized, and we've got really good up to 1923, and then crashes. So the 20th century is largely unavailable from the Internet Archive, and it's the same graph from Google, but interestingly, it's also the same graph from Amazon. If you take what's the books that are available, basically the 20th century is missing from Amazon, so you can't even buy them. So there's an impactful century. It's kind of important, and it's just removed from the environment that we have out there for people. So there are people that are actively trying to poison the environment, and there's missing whole sections of how we're bringing people up. Okay, so in your classic arc of sort of, okay, the world's terrible, and now here's a wonderful fix. So let me talk a little bit about the Internet Archive and Wikipedia and sort of how we can go and bolster and strengthen some of the nonprofit structures that can provide a better information ecosystem. Internet Archive, nonprofit, we're based here in San Francisco. Motto is universal access to all knowledge. Can we make all the published works of humankind available to everybody? It turns out the answer is yes. So all the books, music, video, web pages, software ever published by humans, you could make it available to anybody curious enough to want to have access to it. Library of Alexandria version 2 was the vision of the internet that I signed on to when I sort of joined into this internet thing in 1980. Actually really true. Anyway, so the Internet Archive is just the latest phase for me in trying to build out this vision of having it so that there's an ecosystem, that information ecosystem that works, so you can have access to it as well as our machines and AIs can have access to it. What we do is we collect materials. These are big numbers. They're meant to just be kind of like, wow, that's a really big number. But we do millions of movies, millions of audio files. We do millions of hours of televisions. We have millions of ebooks. We have 300 billion web pages. We try to get every web page from every website every 2 months. We work with the Library of Congress, 600 institutions. It's an enormous effort to try to make it so that it's there. So when the government goes and deletes whole websites, we have it. When they go and try to whitewash their past so that they weren't that kind of person, now that they're in the government, we have it. So we're in a lot of the press these days in using the Wayback Machine. But I'm not going to sort of talk about that so much as a broader concept of this information ecosystem and how we globally and also locally within the Bay Area should be reinforcing it and counteracting some of the other forces that are going on. We see ourselves within the library idea, free to the people. I talked to Tim Draper yesterday. He's like, what do you think about philanthropy? He says, they're terrible, horrible. You know, it's like, what about Internet Archive? Oh, you work for the, yeah, great. I'm glad you're doing it. There are some things that I think actually really do need to be non-commercial and a non-profit. And when you own and control other people's information, or you collect and distribute other people's information, that's a good example of when it should be open and transparent. Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the #5 most popular website. How many of you have used Wikipedia in the last week? Awesome, probably last day if you weren't sitting here, right? I mean, Wikipedia is phenomenal. We're the #300th website. Okay, I'm a little envious. Okay, Okay, but doesn't mean that there's 100 million less popular than we are, so I don't feel too bad. But what we've been doing is trying to bolster Wikipedia. Just 2 weeks ago, they came out with this study, which I think is cool. All the footnotes, the citations, 6% of those people that go to a web page, a Wikipedia page, click through on the footnotes. It's kind of amazing because I generally don't. But anyway, 6% do, and they went and found what do they click and go to. And the most popular, by far, is the Wayback Machine. And so the Wayback Machine, by far, is the most popular. And the reason why is because we started actively collecting every web page, every Wikipedia editor referred to, and archived it immediately. Then we worked through with the Wikipedia community, which is not easy, to make a robot to fix all the broken links. And we fixed 5.5 million web pages, links on Wikipedia to try to make it so that you can actually go to them. So we fixed 5.5 million, and we're the most popular. The next is Google Books, down. And then the next is journal literature. And Google Books, if you've gone to it, usually these snippets, it's really not very good. So our target is to basically go and make it so that Wikipedia comes true, the web comes true, that there's this linking structure to knowledge that works. It's sort of the myth that it all works, but it doesn't really work unless there are real organizations like Wikipedia and ourselves to go and make it work. So we've had some success by going and fixing the Wayback Machine. So but let's go and talk about the books. So we worked with them to find out all of the books that are referenced in Wikipedia, and there are about 1.5 million. We mixed these with with the most popular books that are on syllabi, and also that are held in libraries. We want to make all of these available online. So most of these books aren't online, as we saw. They're not. And if they are, they're behind some sort of paywall or very difficult. To scan a book, we've gotten it down to $20 a book. And this took an enormous amount of effort over the last 10 years. We digitize about 1,000 books a day. We have a room smaller than this, about this big, inside the Library of Congress. We're digitizing up a storm. But we're really gearing it up now because of the last election cycle, and we just said we weren't doing our jobs right. We have an information environment that's not good enough. So we said, okay, let's go fill in all the Wikipedia books. Let's just make the thing come true. So it's $20 a book. We're going for 4 million books. At 4 million books, that is a Yale, a Princeton, or a Boston Public Library available to anybody. You don't have to go to those institutions. Anybody in the world. It's another 4 million on top of what we've already done. That's what it takes. You take the $20 for 4 million, about an $80 million for doing the digitization, about 20 million more to go and do all of the rest of the work. So it's about a $100 million project to bring books completely onto the net. How do you do this within copyright? Google got sued and they got stopped. Well, we've got a different approach, and we've been working with libraries, and it's been going for the last since 2011 to have, if you have one physical book, you can make one digital book. So it's one reader at a time. So it kind of sounds a little lame. It is a little lame, but we're not sued. So that's a good thing. So the idea is you digitize a book and you can lend it. And then if you have more than one physical copy of that book, then you can lend multiple digital versions. So it takes a Red Hook, New York, a little public library that has 40,000 books. You wave a wand, bing! Now all of those books are not only also physical, but they're now also digital. So their patrons can, if they can take out the physical book, they can now take out the digital book instead if they want to. So it's integrated with their catalogs. All of that is working. It gets over the physical distance barrier to access, so people can get it from anywhere. There's reader privacy, unlike when you buy books from Amazon. That's one subpoena away, or one really close tap of everything you've ever read, or all of Netflix movies you've ever seen are perfectly available to people that Anyway, some people trust them. So there's improved accessibility for dyslexic. Turns out 7% of the incoming freshmen in the University of Toronto have trouble with print. University of Toronto is a top university. These are the people that made it to the University of Toronto have trouble with print. Well, think of all the kids that have trouble with print that didn't make it to the University of Toronto because they were handed books. So can we go and make it so that these things work better for those students? Long-term public access to knowledge, sort of in the tradition of Carnegie. This is when the library was first built and now, right? It's like ta-da. So I mean, in some sense, it's kind of cool that they're still there, but they're still there in exactly the same way. We need to rethink libraries, but they're still massively funded, and they're believed in and supported. So how do we go and build this up? If a book isn't digital, it's as if it doesn't exist. Let me tell the story about Wendy Hanamura. She works at the Internet Archive. She grew up in Oakland, and she got this book out from the Oakland Public Library. She's my age, and she realized when she read this that when her grandparents were talking about that camp had barbed wire on the Japanese American, and it was internment camps. And this was a life-changing book for her. Her son, who went to Harvard, wanted to write an essay on family legacies. This would have been a perfect book for him, but not available, except on the Open Library and the Internet Archive site. And so here it is, and you can borrow this book, and he could actually go then and borrow this book and have that kind of impactful relationship with a book digitally that had so affected his mother. So can we go and take these wonderful books that are way out of print, but also absolutely current books, and make them more available so that if you go to a Wikipedia page and there's a link on the bottom, you click and you go and you see a page. If you flip a bunch of pages, maybe it turns you off, makes you borrow it, but at least the first part, you can get deeper than just Wikipedia. When I was growing up, if you just did your reports out of the encyclopedia, you got a D, right? That was not good enough. And we are bringing people up on Wikipedia, on the encyclopedia, and making it so you can't click through. So can we go and make that come true? So is this legal? Well, turns out, yes. And there's a bunch of lawyers, including Michelle Wu, who's done these studies, as well as Pam Samuelson, UC Berkeley, and there's gathering evidence. Also, we've been doing this now for 7 years, and it's been working. This idea of digitize and lend, controlled digital lending, focus on temporary digital access and circulation control. So all's good. We even have some publishers, MIT Press, Cornell Press, Houghton Mifflin, that have explicitly agreed, and I love Houghton Mifflin's line in their contract with the Boston Public Library that's holding all of their archives, that accessible to all published literature is possible while still protecting the rights of authors, illustrators, designers, and publishers as they signed on to this program. So the idea of being able to get this stuff out there, I think we're doing well where Google got stopped, and we can do it. So good news, actually. This is a picture from a few weeks ago of loading up books and scanners, and that are going to the Philippines. So we're setting up a super scanning center in the Philippines. My wife Mary and I were going to the Philippines next week to kick off the scanning center there. Tomorrow. We're going to the Philippines to go and install and get these this going, so we can do 500,000 to 1 million books every year at this sort of low price point that we've been able to figure out. So that's really cool. In conclusion, I would suggest we have a Carnegie moment. Andrew Carnegie took a pile of his money, bought his way into heaven. That's kind of awesome. But he also left a legacy of changing the information ecosystem in the United States. And there may be one of the reasons why the United States did so well through the 20th century was actually having a library system. It badly needs updating. The good news is people are using online materials and trying to learn from them. And we collectively need to make it better. And books is just one part of it, but that's what I thought I'd emphasize. I think it could be sort of our Carnegie moment to be able to move this whole infrastructure forward. Thank you. Questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, nevertheless, what about the right and how you deal with it? You say that there are no problem, but
There's no
also
problem.
right
The copyright?
Yes.
We buy books, right? We physically own them. So there's no more copies being circulated. So it's a little lame. I mean, it really is. I mean, there's there's only one copy. But if other libraries join in, there can be multiple copies of that book that's available. So there's waiting lists on the really popular ones, and we go and direct people to the local library, to Amazon, Better World Books, and how to buy them, and the like. So it is controlled digital lending. There's no more copies circulating than there ever has been. They're just, some of them are now format shifted to a generation that wants it in this new way. I'm old enough that I had long playing records. And when CDs came out, there was this question: do you go and make a cassette of your LP, or do you buy the CD? And I bought a few of the CDs. Okay, Dark Side of the Moon is going to be awesome on CD, but most of them I just made the cassettes, and that was okay. So the idea of format shifting is generally okay, as long as you don't do a Napster, right, or something like that, where you're just going and putting it out too much. And most of these things are dusty musties, right? We buy what we can from publishers and get ebook versions. They're better that way. But most of these things are not available. Things go out of print extremely fast. So we buy what we can, scan what we have to, and we're basically trying to fill in at least this missing century, but also keeping up to date with books. Does that help? So publishers aren't against it. Some authors kind of go nuts because they're these, but anyway, and we often just take them down. Oh, so people sometimes want to say, oh, my grandfather's book, I really want it completely disappeared from the library. It's like, really? And we explain it, and 80% of the time they go and say, oh, okay, no, that's okay. And then somebody says, still, I want my grandfather to be completely disappeared. And we say, God, right? The next generation is never going to hear about your grandfather. And so anyway, this is how we basically deal with the issues as they come up.
It's very interesting how you pointed out that big parts of the 20th century information are actually missing, and then generally to the people a lot of information is missing, because you need to go to the libraries or dig for the books that give you the information that would make you smarter. Plus another aspect is language from my point of view, because a lot of the knowledge is local.
Yes.
So if you, like I'm German, or if you have a Spaniard or whatever, it's like how in the future, like what you mentioned a little as your dream, as I understood, to have like a universal library where all the
you want to
knowledge would
automatically
be
translate it.
And that would be then, needed, that it's
So
automatically
some people need it in
translated.
large print, some people need it in a new language. A lot of people are listening to books.
Mhm.
I hear ever more people going and saying, oh yeah, I don't read books anymore, I listen to books. And actually sometimes they're calling listening reading. I read that book, but really what they did is they listened to it. And so let's do that to all books. And let's just get there. And the cool thing about this is it doesn't cost that much. And we found a way, by being non-commercial, respectful to authors and publishers, to be able to make it through this. And I think right now, given the troubles the internet has had, recently there's a lot of motivation for people to think a little differently and out of just my mind, but like, how are we going to save the Republic? I mean, what's going on here at an enormous scale? We've got a problem. So I think there's some latitude that we're getting to do some experiments, as long as people don't feel like they're being taken advantage of. I've been collecting other people's stuff for 20 years at scale and making it available again. And the key thing that I've learned out of all of this is people don't want to feel like they're being taken advantage of. If they feel like they're being taken advantage of, they'll throw things at you. They'll throw things like lawyers at you. And we have been around for 22 years now, and we don't have any problems. And it's because we have this bend not break, and we try to basically figure out how to make it go. Other questions?
I have two questions. One, I'm curious of your opinion of why there is a lack of information in the 20th century.
Why is it gone? Copyright.
So copyright.
The copyright. So we've been digitizing, and the libraries will pay us to digitize books. Most of the Internet Archive's money comes from libraries paying us 10 cents, 12 cents a page to digitize books or collect web pages for it. That's where most of the money comes from. But they won't go beyond 1923 because they're scared. There's a lawsuit with Google, So and we're starting to work with more libraries, are kind of going in a place that the public libraries and even the national libraries just don't feel that they can go.
My second question is, how are you securing your data?
Okay, yeah, right. The Library of Alexandria is best known for burning, right? So what happens to libraries is they're destroyed. They're burned, and they're burned by governments, historically. That's not a political libertarian thing. It's just like historical, what happens. So if we want to learn from the Library of Alexandria version 1, let's have multiple copies. If they had made a copy in India or China of the Library of Alexandria, we'd have the other works of Aristotle, the other plays of Euripides, but we don't. So we have a copy in San Francisco. We have a copy in Richmond, California. Okay, okay. We have a partial copy in Amsterdam, and we have a partial copy in Alexandria, Egypt. For real. It's kind of neat. And we're building one up in Canada. So we've got an earthquake zone, Holland is a flood zone, and the Middle East. What could go wrong? Okay, so I think we need a few more around. But it's cloud, but yeah, cloud lives someplace, and cloud usually means it's owned and controlled by some organization that is perfectly happy to turn you off if they get a. So we actually own and control our own machines, and that's part of the resilience. So we're here in San Francisco, and so you should definitely come and visit us. We can show you our blinking. We'll show you our petabytes. The total collection of the Internet Archive is about 40 petabytes of data. It's a lot. We serve about 4 million people every day. We have fiber optics piped because of San Francisco straight into this internet switches. We're a major node, and you can see it all working. And so while you're here in San Francisco, or if you live in the area, but if you're just visiting, come and visit us. We're a different kind of organization. We're very open. Open doors, open transparency.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brewster Sept.
Thank you so much.